Hi, this is Chet Gladkowski and welcome to the Handyman series. We need a handyman, the one who has the right tools and the right touch and the right techniques, and comes along at just the right time. Because the handyman in the time of Jesus was someone who worked on things that were hard, like stone or brick or wood. And I need somebody like that. And if I and you and I are at all honest with one another, we both need it because we're all hard headed and we're all hard hearted. This week we're going to look at an argument that turned into a faithless and faithful father. And it all starts with an argument. Isn't that the way it usually is? The Farmer's Almanac says you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. I read about a study that says couples argue 312 times a year. I don't know how they come up with that number, but that's a number, and they do it on Thursday at 8 p.m. It's probably about using the clicker to the remote. But if you know people like I know people, there's lots of arguing going on within our culture. There's even a part where the meathead and Archie have an argument over how to put socks and shoes on. What a great scene that is. But it is like so much of life. These little tiny things erupt into these major explosions. And this happened with Jesus as he was coming down from the Mount of Transfiguration. The three of his disciples had seen him transformed from just being a human into his heavenly likeness. And they were just blown away by that. They come down the mountain and they meet a bunch of people, and it's a crowd, and they start with an argument. And isn't that the way it usually is? The argument was going on, and Jesus asked them in Mark 9:16, "What are you arguing about?" Jesus coming down from this mountaintop experience, and there's nothing more important for him right at that moment, right at that place. He could have just blown them away and thought, man, wouldn't it be great just to go back up on that mountain and be face to face with God again? But he listens. There's nothing more important right at that moment, and he listens. And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son, and he has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. And whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so." This is a father. Maybe you've been in that place where your child, your son, your daughter was in desperate straits, and you brought them, you carried them, you put them in your car to take them to somebody who could help them. And this particular problem the father talks about as a demon. There is a you may just think about, well, it's all about what I can feel and touch. Well, this is a parallel universe. There's lots of things going on that we can't see and we can't touch. When your cell phone rings, do you see the waves that come into it? No. Maybe something can measure them, but you and I can't. And there is a spiritual realm that sits around us. And the effects of this spiritual realm made this boy mute, threw him down. He foamed at the mouth. He grinded his teeth. He ground his teeth so hard that it squeaked. And then, oh, doesn't that just, you ever do that, grind your teeth? Or your teeth hurt? That's the kind of desperate situation he was in. And there was no way out. And it was a whenever kind of a thing. Without warning, it happened. It wasn't like, well, there's an appointment. I got my sundial set. I know when it's going to happen. It's going to be under these circumstances. It's whenever we have vanilla pudding and he has an allergic reaction. It was a whenever thing. Sometimes there's a whenever thing in life. You don't expect it. You don't know it's coming, but it comes. And he answered them. This is Jesus speaking to his disciples and this whole crowd of people. He calls them, "You faithless generation." Not exactly how to win friends and influence people. "How much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me. This is an unbelievable expression. And Jesus doesn't hide his frustration. You know, there are people say, oh, I can't show my feelings. Jesus wasn't like that at all. He showed his frustration. He showed his love. You see, we live in this spiritual universe. Demons are real. They're nothing to fool around with. This is not just Ghostbusters. But then again, there's not a demon behind every problem. And this particular situation had a spiritual element behind it. And it was whenever. And the father says, it has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us. There was an urgency. Can you do anything? Can you help? He's pleading for his son. You know, the honesty of an uncertain and desperate father. This was the father pleading for the son. The son maybe could or could not help himself, could or could not plead for himself, but the father pleads. The parent pleads for their child. Jesus said to him, if you are able, all things can be done for the one who believes. Immediately the father cried out, I believe. Help my unbelief. Aren't those amazing words? I believe, but help my unbelief. I really love these honest words of this father. He doesn't think, and Jesus doesn't expect us to get to 100% of spiritual maturity before he'll listen. He doesn't expect us to be 100% spiritually driven. He doesn't expect us to have all of our stuff together before we come to him. We come to him with that little bit of faith. The Father says, I have some faith, but boy, I got this mountain of unbelief on my back. Help me. And you look at how he describes his situation, he says, if you are able, and Jesus says, I am able. This is the cry of our heart. We cry out, and maybe you don't really believe in that there's a God. But I bet there are times when things are going bad that even you will turn up and say, I don't know if anybody's there. I don't know if anybody's listening. But if you are, man, life really sucks. And there's this tragic situation down here. Help my unbelief. He asks Jesus, and Jesus responds, about help. We have this idea that Jesus wants to help. He responds to our cries to help. He doesn't sit back there and say, well, I will listen, I will respond when you do something. No, it's the cry of help. And it's the idea of anything and everything. The Father says, can you do anything? Are your arms have any muscles at all? And Jesus says, my arms are strong. I can do all things. And finally, it's the area of belief and unbelief. The idea of belief is what holds down life. What anchors us when all around things are going badly? It's like a C-clamp that you put down and you screw it up to tighten, or you put rope on something. Jesus says, what is the thing that holds down your life? And he says it's got to be him. When Jesus saw that the crowd came running in Mark 9:25, he sees all this interest and people are running, and Jesus decides he better act beforehand. So he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you spirit that keeps this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never come into him again. Jesus is in control. It's not this meek and mild Jesus, this Mr. Milquetoast kind of thing. He's in control. He gives the command. He gives the orders. He has the power and authority. And he says, you get out. He commands him to get out. And after crying and convulsing the boy terribly, that spirit came out. And the boy was like a corpse. So that most of the people said, he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up. he was able to stand. There was a cry of release, a cry of relief. And I wonder if the father cried out also as he saw the boy and wondered what's going on. What about my son? My son looks dead. I wonder if he wept for him. But then Jesus picks him up by the hand and does all the heavy lifting. And this is the whole point. Jesus does the heavy lifting in life. Jesus is the one who has all the power. We come and asking for help because we are powerless and our faith is little. And he never turns us away. He never says, go back and memorize these 10 points. Here's a to-do list for you to get my attention. He doesn't do that. We come to him with the little bit of faith, the little bit of knowledge, and he says, I'll receive you right where you're at. There is no big to-do list. The difference is a to-do versus to-done. The idea behind faith in Jesus is that he says, I've done it all. You can't do it. I am God from eternity past, and you couldn't fix yourself. So I had to come down. I left the throne of heaven to come down to live a life that we couldn't live, to pay a price that we couldn't pay, and to die a death that we couldn't die. And then to be risen from the dead is the proof that all of that was true. He says, I'm the one. Paul says in Galatians 5:1, for it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. You see, the Father came knowing he couldn't fix it. He and the Son were slaves, and they couldn't get out. When we're freed by Jesus, we are free indeed. He breaks that yoke. Now, I don't know what kind of slavery you're in, but I know the kind of slavery that I find myself in. I find myself in the slavery of worry, in the slavery of arrogance. I was listening to a dear sister the other day talk about how she was watching someone in a pharmacy and how they were ordering pain pills. And she thought to herself, I used to be addicted to pain pills and I'm free now. Why doesn't he set himself free? Why doesn't he get his life together? And she said to herself, as if God touched her on the shoulder, says, wasn't that just like you? She hung her head in shame and said, Jesus, forgive me. Help my unbelief. And she prayed a prayer for that dear person. You see, the law of hiding from our past and our present is all around us. Jesus says, bring it to me. I am able to take whatever you're hiding from and to begin the process. For some people, it will be immediate. For some people, it may be a while. For some people, it may be the rest of your life. But we have a faithful Father, a wounded healer who is willing and able to teach, not just teach information, but to lift us up, to grab us by the hand and give us power to live for today. Isn't that the kind of God we all deserve? Isn't that the kind of God you deserve and desire? He's the only one who can heal us of our brokenness and hiding. Let me pray. Our Father and our God, I thank you that you are the God who lifts us up, who doesn't turn away and say, well, get yourself together. Here's 5 things. Go do them first. It's come follow me. And that is enough. Thank you that in faith you receive us. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks so much for listening. God bless and bye-bye.